Do a little flip. This is all the bullshit. I'm just gonna do a quick little rundown of everything that I've done in here. So basically, when I was building everything, when I was cooking up this whole setup, everything that I was doing was basically in the rear. I didn't think that I'd have to do a lot of stuff with the front, just because it's a sleeve style setup. So I was like, oh, I'll just throw sleeves in it, and it'll be good, and maybe do lowers if I have to. Nobody sells lowers for these cars, but I'm pretty sure the E39 lowers bolt in. Although there's 3 arms, there's a thrust arm, a camber arm, and then a tie rod. They only sell camber arms for the E39s, but I was like, maybe that'll work. But I was like, whatever, I'll just throw sleeves in it, in the SLR top hats, and see where we get from there. So these towers are the same as E36 towers, bolt pattern wise. So you can throw E36, these are E36 SLR top hats. So they're good for about, I want to say they're good for about 11 degrees. I think that is what they say on their site, maybe 10, 11 degrees. So I have my top hats all the way maxed. I do have my strut towers slotted for them. So they're at full adjustment right now. Other than that, basically it's just towers are stock. Other than all the cutting, which is what I was going to get into. So it's basically these sleeves, and then all the ball joints, all the arms from down below are stock, which is what completely fucked me at GAT, is having all the arms stock. So with the sleeves and the camber plates, the problem is my sleeves are tilted to -20, because it's about 21 degrees in the front, and when you tilt the sleeves, you get about half of the camber that you tilt it to. So 20, you get about 10 degrees. 20 is obviously a very aggressive tilt, and tilting the sleeves that much just completely screwed me over for GAT. Like I've said a few times, basically the arms just bind in the hub with such an aggressive sleeve angle. It just doesn't work. The turning binds at about a half turn. You can feel it even once you start turning the wheel. You can just tell that everything is just fighting you. So that's what caused my coilovers to snap in GAT, which sucks, because I had it on about 16 degrees before. I think the sleeves were done to about 14 degrees, and it was pretty good. I was pretty happy with the setup, but obviously right before GAT I decided to go a bunch more tilt in the rear, and then I wanted to match the front, and everything cleared. I could still run -20 sleeves with no spacer on this setup, and it looked pretty good, but it just didn't drive correctly, obviously, with the binding, so that sucked. But when I was doing everything with this whole setup, cooking everything up, I lowered it, and I just couldn't get the front to go any lower, and I was really confused, and the only thing that I hadn't thought about was the actual frame rail here. So I was checking everything. I decided to take the fenders off. I'll throw in some pictures here when I actually took the fender off and found why it was sitting on it, but I realized that it was sitting on it. So then I just decided to just cut everything out, basically. There's not much structural integrity left in this car right now. I'm just about to do everything to actually do it correctly. There's a guy on Instagram, he's pretty cool, E36. He's gonna be making me, he runs them on his car, but I'm gonna get some made from him. They're a little bit shorter than his, but they're billet stainless strut towers. So I'm gonna cut this tower completely off of the frame and tube the whole front end. And my idea basically is to get away from the sleeves. I'm gonna tilt the actual towers in. So I'm gonna relocate my ABS module, obviously delete the strut bar and everything. I'd take the fender off right now, but I just don't feel like doing it. It's a whole lot of work. Hood, sadly these fenders are bolted under the hood, so hood has to at least come slightly off, taking the fender off. But under here, there's absolutely nothing. Again, I'll throw a picture in here or something, just about what the how it actually looks like under here. But basically everything from back here to about up here is completely cut out, so there's nothing under here, which, like I've said, obviously not great structural integrity. But that's all good. I was gonna tube it before GAT, but it just didn't work out how I wanted it to. A lot of things fell through, which happens. It's just life. But I decided I was gonna send it anyway. If they collapsed on me, is what it is. Luckily, this car sits low enough that if the towers did collapse, it wouldn't fall very much until it just sat on the frame rail, which was very apparent when I actually snapped the coilovers, because it kind of just started dragging frame rail on the ground. That's really all it did. But yeah, that's the general setup for the front. It's basically just everything cut out. I have the strut bar here, which probably saved me at GAT from actually collapsing the towers. And the fact that I'm not on washers. Like I said, it's on 50K still, so it's still on springs. It has a little bit of actual compression. But yeah, strut tower is just about the only structural thing that I have left. All of the metal going down there is pretty strong. I mean, you can feel that the tower isn't very weak. Right here is pretty weak, but this part isn't really structural. The main structural part that I've cut out is actually just this back half. Everything up to the front kind of doesn't really do much up here. But yeah, that's the general setup for the front. Complete shit show right now, obviously. This is, I kind of forgot about that. That is the part that I cut out from under. I forget which side that is. I think that's this side, actually. I think that's the passenger side. Because when I cut it out, as you can see right here, might be a little hard to see, this is where the hood strut would go onto. So hood strut to hood strut right here. Obviously I don't have struts anymore, just because I cut everything off, which kind of sucks, but I use this as my hood prop now, and it works pretty well. Other than that, obviously I have my airbox deleted, because the tire actually hits the airbox with the airbox in the car. So I had to take that out. I got too lazy. I never threw like an intake on it. Matt's airflow sensor has a little bit of a fucking filter on it, so no biggie. Let's see. So down here, this is all my wire tucking. It's basically just routed up and over. Which worked pretty well. Basically, I just pulled it down from up here. It's not touching the tire or anything. It's pulled against the actual frame. And then I just have a self-tapper here holding on a little bracket, which just holds the thing up here. But yeah, so this is the setup for this. Obviously, it's very close. But all my ground cables go right here. So I kind of have to leave that as is. But it works. Let's see, other side, same style thing. The bracket for this, for the power steering reservoir, I was actually still able to keep, which worked pretty well. The bracket for the oil filter housing, it's still here, but the rubber mounts have sheared off. Super common thing on these cars. It just happens over time. But yeah, so that's basically the setup for the bay. I don't have my beauty cover on or anything like that right now. Normally beauty cover goes over the motor. I don't know if it clears with the strut bar, but I'm obviously going to have to delete the strut bar anyway with my towers, just because the plan, like I've said, is going to be so cut the whole tower off and actually tilt it in to gain camber from that, which should work out pretty well. I don't know anybody else who's really done it other than maybe some of the people in Japan with Bippu builds. I don't know how many of them tilt the tower or if they just do a ton of arms. I mean, I know a lot of them are Lexus, most of them are Lexus builds. So they have the T-demand arms and everything like that. So they can just have a lot of arms to get camber, which I am going to do all custom arms to help with the binding either way. But I do want to tilt the towers in, just because it seems cool. I've never really seen anybody do it. I think it'll make for some good videos, some interesting content, especially with the billet towers. I think it'll make it look really good. And the tubing here, I want to make it look as pretty as possible. I don't want to do tubs. I want to keep it pretty exposed just because I think it looks cool. And I won't drive this car enough, especially in bad weather, for it to really get that dirty in the engine bay. So I don't really mind it. Other than that, this motor is going to stay in the car for now, I think, at least. It still runs pretty well. It's a 4.4, it's the stock 4.4 that came in the car. Hasn't had chains or guides done, so they'll probably go out soon. But I like how it sounds. If this engine ever does blow, or I just decide to do a swap on the car, I probably am going to throw in an M50 or an M52 from the E36. I have a few of them in my garage. They're kind of just Frankenstein builds. I have a bunch of parts laying around from different stuff. My goal would just to be, my goal would be to do like a 3-liter stroker, like an S50 clone build with the turbo, something like that. I have obviously plenty of space up here just to throw a turbo. So I think that would be pretty cool. These cars in Europe did come with M52 TUs, which is the dual Vanos motor in the E46, which is the same bracketing and everything as the single Vanos cars. So I would be able to use engine mounts. Everything would bolt up super duper easy. Trans mount would be the same. So it would be super simple to get it in the car, but then actually wiring everything up and getting it to work, might be a little bit harder. So I don't know if that's something that I want to go ahead and do right now or later. It'll probably be later. But pulling the motor would definitely make the fabrication for the strut towers easier, so I might go ahead and do that. But with my track record, once the motor comes out of the car, that's basically it. The motor usually never goes back into the car after that. But maybe this will be a different story. Maybe I'll change my mind and actually finish a build for once I pull the engine out. But it usually turns into a shit show after that. Now that I have a garage and everything, maybe it will make it more feasible for me to do it. Yeah, I don't know if there's much else to go over in the front. Yeah, this side, like I said in past video, I think the first video, it is still on the E46 coilover on this side. Cut and welded at the bottom. The sleeve is cut in half. It works. It's not pretty, but it holds. And it works for now, so I'm probably just going to leave it until I actually swap everything over from the tilted towers, or when I do the tilted towers and everything like that. Not really interested in driving the car over the next few weeks, so I don't really mind that much. But it is what it is. Other than that, the front subframe on this car is completely stock. It hasn't been raised or anything like that. It does drag pretty low on the ground. There is a main power wire. I forget if it's for the starter or what, or if it just runs under the car into the cabin. But there is a main power wire that I rubbed through at GAT. Actually, when I snapped my coilover coming into the FOD meet, yeah, I snapped the coilover and I rubbed through the main power wire. So it'll randomly ground out on the ground, and the car will stutter and die, but then it'll start, like you won't even need to start it back up. It'll just die, kind of like stutter, and then come back to life. Really weird stuff. But that's basically what happens. So yeah, I gotta fix that and maybe raise the front subframe, but I'm pretty happy with it for now. Motor's raised a ton, so it's not even close to touching the ground, so I'll probably leave that as is, as long as I keep this motor. If I end up swapping it, I will do custom mounts and go from there. But I'm pretty happy with how it is for now. Ladies and gentlemen, the rear setup. So basically, rear setup on this, well, I didn't talk about it in the first part, but it is on Godspeed coilovers all the way around. It's Godspeed mono or S coilovers. They're just about the cheapest coils you can get on this chassis. I didn't feel like spending a lot of money because the car was going to ride like ass anyway. Didn't really care. Maybe I'll upgrade them in the future. Probably won't, but whatever. So it's on Godspeed mono or S's all the way around. I've said it a few times. I'm on 50K Swift springs. They're 4-inch, 63 inner diameter or whatever. That's suspension, coilover wise. Rear arms, they're Silver Project arms. It's the camber and the toe arm. Both have been shortened about 1.5 inches. I pull all of my camber in my rear from my upper arms. It's about negative 23 degrees of rear camber on this setup. It's just about the most I can go. It's already, the barrel is hitting the coilover. So I've debated going cantilever setup just because I want to pull the whole wheel in more. I'm gonna do some custom lowers because basically the rear arms, absolutely all of my camber is pulled from my upper arms. I don't have any lowers, which is definitely odd. Most cars can't do that with this much camber. This one surprisingly can, I guess. I don't have any axle blind. It's fine, drives completely normal. Well, as normal as the car actually would drive. Yeah, so that's the arm setup in the rear. It's just the uppers. Without them shortened, you can get about 11 degrees, something like that. But I shorten them just to get as much as possible. Other things for the rear. Let's see, I have a subframe raise. I'll throw some pictures in somewhere up here. Basically, it's just stock subframe, and then I shaved down the actual cups where it bolts into the chassis. The stock mounts, they come quite a bit up out of the subframe. So I went ahead and I pressed the stock mounts, the stock bushings out. They have a little metal insert in the middle. Pushed them out, and then I went ahead and ground down the subframe about even. Again, I'll throw some pictures in here just for a visual help. But it's basically ground down, so it's flat. That got me about, I want to say, 1/2 inch to maybe 3/4 of an inch. And then I went ahead and did polyurethane bushings in the subframe. I think they're 80A. I forget who they're by. They're red bushings. I don't know, pretty nice. Again, you'll see it in the pictures. Nice bushings, a little bit expensive. If I were to do it again, I probably would have just made my own bushings, especially because I bought them about 260 bucks, 300 bucks, something like that, coming from the UK. And then I cut them instantly, just because they are too tall. You know, they obviously are designed, they're a two-piece design, so you put the bottom in, put the top in, and they are designed for the stock height of the subframe. But since mine is ground down so much, I had to cut the top of the bushing off anyway. And then I went ahead and they come with metal inserts to replace the inserts on the stock bushings. Took those inserts and cut them down about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, so it fits in snug. When you put the subframe up, the actual spacers bottom out. They're basically a spacer for the bolt, or it's an insert for the bolt, just to space it out so it actually bottoms out, tightens the subframe up, obviously. So those are ground down or cut down. Had to cut the stock subframe bolts down. Obviously it's too long. They bottom out not enough threads in the chassis, so I had to cut those down. That's basically it for the actual subframe raise itself. I didn't really have to clearance much, except for the massive hole in the trunk, which I will show in just a second. Basically just big hole in the trunk above the subframe. I've posted it on my story a few times. I showed it in the video yesterday. But basically just huge hole in the trunk. It didn't really hit that much. I don't know if I really had to cut out the trunk, especially as much as I did. But I got a little happy with it. I was like, big hole in the trunk, cool. You can see a lot of stuff. Happy that I did it. Looks sick. But probably wouldn't have to do it, especially if you just didn't raise it. If you raise it just a little bit less, then it'd be all good. Whole reason why I raised my rear subframe. Originally, I didn't think you could do a diff raise on this car. It's never been done on E39 or this car, specific diff raise. So I was like, oh, I'll just raise the whole subframe. I know that's a pretty common thing, especially on the LS chassis. I know some of the IS guys do it. Raised subframes are a common thing. So I was like, oh, that's gonna be easier to tackle. I'll just grind it down, put it back in, give me some space. Worked out pretty well. But for how low I wanted to go, or how much lower I wanted to go versus before, I just decided that I wanted to try to raise the differential as well. So to raise the differential, I pushed these stock bushings out, pressed them out of the subframe, and then I took I cut around the stock bushings for the little metal insert that actually goes in, that's in the middle of the bushing. Went ahead and ground all the rubber off of them, and then I took just the metal inserts, throw some pictures in here. Took just the metal inserts, I pushed them to the top, obviously to raise the diff in the subframe. Pushed it to the top, laid the subframe upright, and then I put glass behind it. If I were to do it again, I didn't have any mold release, so when I put the glass on the bottom, because obviously I needed something to pour into, so I put the glass on the bottom, but once it was done curing and everything, I couldn't actually pull the glass off because the polyurethane had actually bonded to the glass. So if I were to do it again, two things that I would change. First thing, I wouldn't pour it directly into the subframe. These bushings are in there for life now, basically. I mean, they can obviously be burned out. They can't be pressed out just because I poured the polyurethane directly into the subframe. So it's not like a press-in bushing, it's actually the polyurethane has attached itself to the subframe, which I'm fine with because I'm never going to do the bushings again. They'll be fine. They're 80A hardness, so pretty stiff, but nothing crazy. So yeah, that's the first thing that I would do. Second thing that I would do is, if you were going to pour it directly into the subframe, use some mold release, spray it on the glass or whatever you're going to put behind the actual subframe so that you can pour it in. And then once it's done and it's cured correctly, you should just be able to pull the glass off. And it'll work fine from there. So yeah, so that's what I did for the bushings. It's 80A liquid. I'll throw the link in the description just if anybody wants to try to do it or something like that. I know a few people have reached out to me. I've never seen anybody do it the way that I've done it. It's just, I know that some cars, they actually have diff raise bushings or diff raise kits. You know, I know there's different styles to do it. But this is just a way that I was like, oh, you know, I think it'll work, and it actually ended up working. Only thing, I did have to clearance above the input shaft for the diff, the actual input flange, the pinion flange. I had to clearance above, I had to clearance like some of the trunk out basically, just to fit the input shaft there. But that's really the only thing that I have to actually clearance for the diff raise. Luckily it doesn't hit the subframe yet or anything like that. Like the actual axles don't hit the subframe because it is raised quite a bit. I think I raised the diff, I want to say it's about 1 inch. I could have done it more if I shaved the actual inserts down a little bit just so that I could push it up higher. Obviously I'll throw the pictures in here and just kind of maybe circle out what I'm actually explaining. But yeah, so I could have raised it a little bit more, but this is plenty. Before, the diff was absolutely dragging on the ground. I'd already dragged through just about half of the bolts on the bottom. But now the diff sits about 2 inches off the ground, so absolutely plenty of clearance, really nothing that I'm worried about there. Resealed the diff while it was out, welded it, so it does have a welded diff in the car. Pretty worried about getting stuck in a lot of places, and it was an open diff. So I was like, for the hell of it, I'll just weld it, won't get stuck anywhere. Hasn't failed me yet or anything like that. Obviously I don't drive the car, well, one, really at all, and two, I wouldn't really drive it in the rain anyway, so I'm not really too worried about having to drive around with the welded. But that's for the subframe raise and the diff raise. Both pretty simple. Like I said on one of my other videos, I think it was the first video, I think there's only one other person. I think Chino Cortez is the only other person that's done a raised subframe. I don't know how he did his actual subframe. I know that I'm the only person that did it this way, I'm pretty sure at least. It works pretty decently. I probably would redo it and do it a little bit nicer. I kind of just got carried away with it. I didn't really know what I was doing. Just kind of got messy with the angle grinder and the Sawzall and whatnot. So I would redo it. I would do my own bushings for the subframe and whatnot. Other than that, it turned out pretty well. Bolts in fine. I'll see if I can get some clips here in a sec and just actually kind of show it a little bit. But it works out pretty well. Other than that, the rear end, obviously fuel cell is in the trunk. It's under the trunk. It's an 18-gallon. It's a Rhodes fuel cell. It's 8 AN in the trunk, and then it goes to 2 bulkhead fittings, and it changes it to 6 AN. And then it runs, it's 6 AN all the way to the rest of the actual rail. So it's a 6 AN line to a Summit fuel pump, and then it's to an Evil Energy filter. I do have a filter in the trunk as well, a pre-pump filter. So I have a pre-pump filter and a post-pump filter. So I ran 2 filters, and then to a fuel pressure regulator. It's just an aftermarket fuel pressure regulator. I have a return going back into the trunk, and then I have my feed line going all the way up to the front of the vehicle. And then for the front of the vehicle, I have a quick disconnect fitting, so it uses the stock fitting on the rail, so it's just AN hose all the way up, then to a PTFE AN fitting, to a 6AN male adapted fitting, and then to a quick disconnect so it can just pop right in and use the stock fuel rail. Connection, didn't have to mess with anything like that. The fuel cell works really well. I've wired it up. It has the correct fuel sender in it, the correct ohm range for it, so the gas gauge actually does work in this car. I don't know many other stance cars that actually have a working gas gauge with the fuel cell. It's pretty easy to wire it up in this car. You just run it in line. There's two wires on each side. You just have to run it in line together, and then all the way to the trunk, positive and negative, all the way through in line basically. So it's 4 wires spliced into 2 to the trunk. Everything works there. It works pretty well. Obviously, it doesn't have to be super accurate. It's kind of more just a guessing thing. Obviously, like I said, I don't drive the car enough for it to really matter. When I had first done the cell, I got it from my friend Bag Bitch, aka Colby, good friend of mine. We're running basically the exact same cell setup. I don't really like how he did his fitting, so I went ahead and did my own fitting setup and everything like that. Shout out Tanner, that's my boy. He helped me with a lot of that. Before this, I really had no clue what I was doing. So my setup is an 18-gallon, like I said. So whole rear trunk is cut out. It's sitting on the actual trunk floor where the spare tire well is. So I cut out basically a rectangle in the trunk, and I laid the actual cell into the trunk. Like I said in the first video, or maybe the last video, something like that, I do have angle iron in the trunk, and I'm going to create like an actual like a box for the cell basically to sit in, just because it doesn't have any support right now. It's just sitting on the actual trunk floor of the spare tire well floor, which is starting to collapse actually, so I don't want that to happen. But so that's basically the setup for the rear, for the fuel cell. Like I was saying, so it's an 18-gallon. If I were to redo it, I wouldn't go as big. I don't drive the car enough to need as big of a cell as I did. It is cool, obviously, and I probably wouldn't do it again, to be honest. But if anybody is looking to do a cell, I mean, you can really just kind of calculate, you know, how much you drive the car and like what miles per gallon you get. You don't really need that big of a cell unless you really hate filling up that much. I mean, a lot of the stance car people post up at gas stations anyway, so you don't really need that big of a cell. But it definitely is nice to have. It's kind of a cool flex. My cell is completely hidden in my trunk, which I like. Right now, it's not hidden. Obviously, I took all of the plastic and the actual flooring out just because I'm about to work on the car. So I don't really want it in there right now. But it normally is a completely hidden setup. You can't see the cell or anything like that. Trunk looks completely soft, which is really nice. That's really what I wanted to do. I didn't want a big cell taking up a bunch of the trunk space. Other than that, I have full brake line relocations. So I ran new copper lines for all the rear brakes. So I tucked them up in the front wheel well from the ABS module from the block, and I ran it down above the front subframe, and then it's all the way tucked up in the trans tunnel, all the way to the back, and then split to each side individually. They don't tee off at the back. It's a full individual system, so there's a one line for the rear right and one line for the rear left. So two separate ones that I ran, and then obviously the fuel line. There's only one fuel line going up because the return is before the trans tunnel. It's a returnless system, or well, returnless as in it doesn't go all the way to the rail and then come back. It just has to go to the fuel pressure regulator and then come back. That's just about it. I do have my exhaust ran. I was talking about in the last video. It's about 4 feet of piping from the headers. I had it as a header dump before. It is not anymore. It's about 4 feet of piping, and then it's turned down. It's right at the end of the trans tunnel. So the exhaust ends somewhere around here, something like that, which absolutely sucks because under the seat, obviously where you would normally access the fuel pump, there's the little cover. I don't have the cover on anymore. and the problem is the turn downs turn down directly into the ground, and then push the exhaust fumes right into that fuel pump spot. So then the cabin just gets completely filled with fumes, which is terrible. I can't drive with the windows up at all. I was doing some filming with my brother Brandon in Gap. Shout out BRB Flaking on Instagram. Fucking dope video coming out in December. Fucking hyped for that. Make sure you're all looking out for that. But when I was filming with him, he wanted the windows up while I was filming, so I had to put down whichever side the camera car was on. I'd have to put up that side and put down the other side so that I could actually breathe, because your eyes would just get instant super watery. So that is another thing that I want to fix. I always talk shit about it, but I am pretty happy with how loud the car is. It sounds pretty cool. I think it's very fitting for the style of car that it is, just being loud and obnoxious V8 kind of thing, but just super slow, which I think is dope. But yeah, also all of the lines that are ran in the trans tunnel, obviously I was just talking about my exhaust, everything is ran in the trans tunnel, but I have full heat lines, heat wrap on all of my lines, brake lines and fuel lines. Obviously running next to the exhaust, I don't want them to get very hot, so I got, it's like braided, not braided, it's like Kevlar, like woven, it's like fuel line protectant stuff. I'll throw a picture in somewhere here of what it actually looks like, but it is heat protectant stuff. I was a little bit worried about that, but not a big problem. Other than that, so these are clear tails, obviously. They are stock E38 tails. They're pre-facelift tails with the lenses pulled off. So you just break the lenses off. But then these, actually, I got custom lenses made. So a lot of people run around with just no lenses on, which I didn't want. I wanted lenses, so I got these lenses custom made. Pretty happy with them. I need to send them back, get a few things. The car it's a little bit too bouncy. It actually it broke a lot of the sealing around it. So I'm gonna send it back, get them resealed. Yeah. Other than that, stock bumper. I talked about doing stuff with the bumper. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. We'll see. That's really it, though. Most of the stuff in the rear is pretty factory, other than just subframe rays, diff rays, coilovers. Yeah. Oh, just talking about the wheels, I guess. Obviously, Welded Ratzinger. I'm on a 1920 stagger, so it's a 19 by 11. I think it's about a -47 front, something like that, -50. It's a 7-inch lip in the front with a 4-inch barrel, no spacer. And then the rear is a 20. It's a 20 by 10, so it's small. It's actually smaller in the rear because you can just fit less. It's a 6-inch lip and a 4-inch barrel, so it's 20 by 10, somewhere around -35, I believe, 32, something like that. So pretty decent specs all around. I'm not too happy with the rear. I want to get an inch bigger lip, but that's for a later thing. Yeah, and then other than that, interior is basically stock on the car. Really nothing that I've done. I have like a Bluetooth module in the car, but that's really it. I have skirts to put on the car, which I've talked about. They obviously can't go on right now. I've cut them a ton to try to clearance as much as possible, but they're still just a little bit too low, so I gotta cut them a bit more, and then I should be able to run it on the car. Just because this stock rocker here, it's not painted, so it's a little bit off color, which sucks. My skirts are the right color, but that is the one thing about this car that pisses me off quite a bit. But that's one of the only things. Other than that, rear quarters, they're trimmed quite a bit. They're shaved down just about as much as possible, and then keeping the stock look. Front, absolutely no roll, anything like that. Rear isn't rolled either. It's just shaved down. The little lip is cut out. And that's basically it. That's really the whole setup for the car. There's really not much that I've done to it. Oh, the only other thing is my hubs. So they are, in the front, it's E36 hubs that have been re-drilled to 5x114. I did it myself. I run press-in Dorman studs. I forget the part number. I think it's 610-423. I want to say is what it is. Just hit me up on Instagram if you want to know more about the re-drill. I re-drilled them myself. I didn't buy them pre-re-drilled. If I redid it, I might do that. But I like it how it is. I'm only going to run 5x114 wheels from now, so I really don't care. Yeah, and then rear is same thing. E36 and E38 hubs in the rear are the exact same. Really no difference there, so that doesn't matter. But it is just my stock E38 hubs. Again, re-drilled the 5x114 with the press-in studs. Although in the rear I did have to delete the parking brake just because everything in the rear hits with the press-in studs. Obviously, normally you don't have a press-in stud. There's no backing on the stock BMW hubs. So I had to delete the full parking brake, which kind of sucks, but again, I don't really care. It's an auto car. It's probably never going to be stick, so I don't really care about it. So those are the hubs. Front hubs, bolt in. They're E36 hubs. They come, little ring that you have to pop off, and then everything's good. So technically, I don't know if the ABS really works, just because the actual ABS sensor does run off of, there's like a seal in the back of the E38 hub. I have a hub somewhere here. I'm too lazy to get it out. But there is actual magnets in the back of the hub of the seal versus the E36 one. It is a ring that comes around it. So you just pop the ring off, slips in, bolts in like normal on the E38. I haven't had any weird things. Wheel speed is off the rear, so it doesn't matter if you take away the ABS sensor in the front. Everything still works fine. Other than that, I have floating center caps. They're from Visual Auto Works. They're the conversion. Obviously, I run serve center caps in my Ratzingers. So it's a Ratzinger backing plate, and then I just have the actual serve caps. When you rebuild the caps, you just pop them off the backing plate, and I just took the serve caps and put them on the Ratzinger floating centers instead of just doing Ratzinger ones. I think this looks a lot better. I still like the Ratzinger center caps, but I think the black and chrome, it just accentuates it a lot more, which I really like. Yeah, that's basically the whole setup for the car. If there's anything that I missed that you want me to go over, I'm totally down. Just let me know. I obviously don't really know what I'm doing with this video stuff. I'm kind of just yapping. Again, another yapping video. My bad, my bad. A lot of people were just asking me the whole setup on the car, so I thought I'd do just kind of an in-depth breakdown. I hope I didn't miss anything. I don't think that I did. Yeah. Oh, and then okay, one of the only things in the rear for the upper arms, you do have to clearance the frame rails quite a bit, especially because I have a raised subframe. I had to cut my rear frame rail about 1.5 inches up just to actually once it tucks in. It was starting to hit, so I just had to cut it out, and I also had to cut out more of the frame rail for the back of the coilover bolt. When you tilt it in, especially all coming from the upper, the whole coilover moves back a little bit, so it was starting to hit the frame rail, so I had to clearance for that as well. So the frame is pretty chopped in the rear. That's going to be one of the first things that I'm going to be addressing. I'm just going to be welding everything up, boxing it in, making it look semi-pretty, something like that. That's that's the first thing that happens once my welder gets here. Yeah. Other than that, basically how it is. If you have any questions on the fuel cell or anything like that, just hit me on Instagram. Totally down to help you out with as much knowledge as I can. I know a lot of people are hitting me up about wiring in the fuel sender so that your actual gauge works. I can try to help you, especially if it's a BMW. If it's not, it gets a little bit harder. You're measuring ohm ranges, stuff like that. But yeah, that's basically it. Pretty funny thing, I actually work at BMW. I'm a technician. A lot of my coworkers think this car is pretty stupid. I think it's pretty stupid as well. Just thought that was a funny thing. A lot of people were asking me what I do. I do work at BMW, although I don't buy any BMW parts for this because they're overpriced, and I like to make my own little hobbled together Frankenstein parts anyway.
So thought I'd just show it real quick. So this is how the subframe mount is. Obviously, let's see, right up there, that's the top part that I just shaved down, and then it bolts up like normal like that. That's also my fuel line right there, and you can see into the trunk fuel cell right there. I have heat wrap on the bottom of it because I thought I was going to run the exhaust here, but I did not. You can see it is just about sitting on the ground, so it needs to be fixed. There's the bulkhead fitting. Let's see, focusing on the wrong thing. It's a 6AN fitting, bulkhead, so running through metal. Then the line runs up, straight up through there, to the front, up, down, and then my whole fuel setup system is right up here in front, which works out pretty well.
Alright guys, I just want to say thank you for watching the video. If you did watch all the way through, definitely appreciate it. I know that it's lots of yapping. This is more just for people who've been asking a bunch of questions about the car. I just wanted a full rundown of the setup. Just thought I'd go through the whole thing. Next video should be me pulling the subframe out of the car. I think I'm going to do it tomorrow. Just start taking a peek at what I actually have to do. Obviously Welder's not here yet, but just want to pull the subframe out, show you guys everything that I have planned for the car, and just kind of start designing stuff, especially with the rear arms and everything like that, kind of figuring out what I need to do. Also take some measurements for the custom subframe, hopefully get into CAD and start designing a custom subframe for it. So those are the main things. Like I said, thank you guys very much for watching. Tons of yapping. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good rest of your night, boys. Peace.